The news does indeed suck. But instead of sitting around and debating on whether or not Jonathan Majors should have been fired, whether or not he's actually truly guilty, let's face the facts. The facts is that Jonathan Majors is fired from Marvel. He was fired as Kang the Conqueror, He Who Remains, any variation of this character that you want to think of. So let's ponder 6 things that Marvel could do to sort of bounce back from the situation. What could they do with Avengers 5? At number 6, we could recast Kang, the character. We can bring in any number of great actors to come in and not only fill that spot, but maybe potentially do their own thing, have their own spin, have their own take on it. And what makes this situation more unique than any other time Marvel has had to recast characters, I'm talking about James Rhodes or Bruce Banner. They've had to do this a few times. They're going to do it coming up with General Ross's character. The difference, though, is that Kang was already introduced as a variant, or that he has variants, multiverses, different versions of himself. Sure, that one scene in Quantumania showed that almost every version of Kang looks exactly like Jonathan Majors, so maybe that wasn't good. But we can still just bring in a different actor and say, this is just a different version. This is just a different variation. And if you look at it, the events of Loki and the end events of Quantumania can almost explain away why the Kang that looks like Jonathan Majors is gone and not coming back. Number 5, I'm not too keen on this idea, but I'm writing it down as a possibility. Initially, I said we could bring back Thanos. And that's the lazy route because Marvel knows that everybody loved Thanos as a villain. Marvel knows that we loved the hell out of that character, his reasons for doing what he was doing. He instantly became a classic villain, one of the top tier villains in cinematic history that we can still quote. We can say snap, and people know what that refers to. Bringing him back, it would be very similar to what they already did in Avengers Endgame, where it was a different multiverse version of Thanos that showed up, and that's how they had a big battle and war with him. So to do that again would be cheap. I'm merely saying it's a possibility. It's on the table if they want to do it. And you might have some people who like Thanos so much that they would embrace it. But then I started to think about something else. Then I started to think about, well, instead of just bringing back Thanos, what if Thanos forms a group of villains, similar to what DC has done in the comics, where Lex Luthor collects a Legion of Doom villains, just some of the best villains that DC has, and the heroes have to go up against them, the Justice League has to go up against them. Well, what if we do the Marvel version of that, where Thanos or whoever has to gather some of the best villains from the Marvel past? I'm talking about Killmonger. I'm talking about any villain that maybe has been killed off, but you want to see them come back. They form a supervillain group, and that's where the movie takes off from there. Number 4, that idea had me sort of spitballing to myself, thinking, well, if you do that, how about this instead? Let Marvel take the Sinister Six. Sony, we all know they're fucking up. We all know that Sony doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and that they've been trying to do a Sinister Six film for, it feels like decades. And they have failed before they even got to that movie. How about you let Marvel do the Sinister Six? How about you let the Avengers have to deal with the Sinister Six? Because the Sinister Six, in theory, are big enough villains and big enough threats that why should Spider-Man have to fight them all by himself? I know he's done it in the past. I know he's done it in comic books and games. But I would love if you make Spider-Man the temporary leader of, let's say, the new Avengers or the young Avengers. And he has to collect a bunch of heroes because technically, as we speak right now, there are no Avengers characters, or at least the Avengers is defunct. A lot of the original core group is dead or have retired, or they're so old that we don't really know the future of them. So Spider-Man having to create a new or young Avengers to face the Sinister Six, and if you bring back Michael Keaton's Vulture, who they've already teased is sort of still out there and still doing stuff, give him a better motivation for why he's still evil, please. Not just that dumb generic stuff at the end of Morbius. And I don't even know if I want to bring in characters like Morbius and Sony's version of Venom. I would probably stick around and see, like, can we do a new Rhino? Can we actually have that character turn into Scorpion? Maybe bring back Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. There's a few possibilities that you could do and make this an Avengers level film. Number 3, Ultron's Revenge. Similar to the earlier idea with Thanos, you could bring back Ultron, but this would make more sense because, one, it's not dealing with multiverse, and I think people are starting to get burnt out on multiverse stuff. Ultron is an AI. He's a computer. You can come up with an explanation for why this character, his algorithm, whatever, still exists, still is out there. There's a backup file, right? There's something. And Ultron, his presence in the comics is felt for long periods of time. He doesn't ever just actually die and go away. He does come back numerous times. So to do that in a movie, not having Ultron as a one-off villain is not the worst idea ever. I think What If has proven that if you do bring back Ultron and actually make him more threatening and serious, he can work wonders. So I would love to see, especially if it's a darker and more evil Ultron, I'd be all about that. Number 2, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this, introduce Doctor Doom. Now, as much as I've been greatly anticipating the MCU's version of Doctor Doom, I've always loved Doctor Doom as a villain. I've always thought that he's a top tier Avengers level villain if written well, if put in the right situations. I think ever since that video game Ultimate Alliance, I thought, man, Doom can really be next level, god tier like villain if you wanted to present him in that way. But I don't want Doctor Doom rushed. I don't want him thrown in as a safety net of like, hey, we just need somebody that the fans know and will gravitate to, and then we'll just move on without any real plans for him. I want Doctor Doom to be brought in, to be integrated with not just the Fantastic Four, but as much as you can do with the character. And then I want him to be treated as said villain. I don't know. That's more tricky for me. It could be great, but it also has potential to be bad. I've already seen Doctor Doom done at least three times bad by Fox. Number 1, for what I think is the best case scenario, the best idea of what we could do to come back from this shitty situation is, instead of doing anything with Kang, instead of doing anything with bringing back old characters, Avengers versus X-Men. This still does tie into multiverse stuff, and we all know that Deadpool 3 is dealing with the X-Men characters, at least the Fox X-Men characters, and who knows, maybe that movie, maybe they kill them all off. So this idea is mute. And don't do the Avengers versus X-Men direct story from the comics. The MCU's never done direct adaptations from comics, and I also feel like the comic book version of this was really weird and too out there. I just want the idea of you give the Fox X-Men characters, the Fox X-Men actors, one last hurrah, one last big event level movie where they come in through multiverse, they don't know the Avengers, or people look at mutants different than they do Avengers, which was always kind of weird, right? They all have powers, so what the hell's the difference? Why are Avengers heroes but mutants are evil? Either way, you use that to treat them as maybe they disagree on something, or maybe they just don't trust each other. And that's where we get a big fight. And I would treat it the same way that we did Captain America Civil War. This can be a one and done. This can be a one-off, and have the movie wrap up with the two sides coming to an agreement, or maybe they find out that Doctor Doom or Magneto or some other villain is the one pulling the strings to make them fight each other. Whatever it is, I think if you put that on a poster Avengers versus X-Men. And if you see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and a lot of those actors from the Fox movies up against our Avengers characters, it would print money. Who would not come out to the theater to see a movie like that? I know it would suck to do this and not have Captain America, not have Tony Stark. It just, maybe it wouldn't feel 100% right. But if you can do it somehow, some way, I think it's worth doing. So, guys, let me know in the comments below, not only what do you think of these ideas, but do you have any of your own ideas that I haven't mentioned for what we can do with Avengers 5? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.